In 1 hour, I'm about to go play frisbee. That means I'm gonna be sprinting, running, jumping, cutting, diving, catching. And before I do something that intense, as someone who has hip impingement and a labral tear in my hip, I found it really helpful to prepare myself for that. So in this video, I'm gonna show you my exact routine for how I prepare my hips for sport. Come check it out. Welcome to my home gym. I'm gonna put out my yoga mat, take out my mobility tools, and start tinkering and tuning up my hips so I can play at my best. So why is it important to mobilize your hips before you go play your sport? Well, if you're someone like me who's got FAI, femoral acetabular impingement, or hip impingement in your hip, then generally speaking, your hips get restricted. They're very tight very easily. And so what I do is I mobilize them, loosen them up, get them ready so that I can move more freely when I'm playing sport, so I can get into deeper positions, and so that I don't hurt myself. So I'm gonna do a 10-15 minute routine. You can follow along if you want. Let's rock and roll. First thing we're gonna do is get a large diameter mobility ball and put it right on that hamstring adductor attachment point. Notice that I'm kind of coming at it from an oblique angle. I'm not coming straight into the hamstrings nor straight into the adductors. Kind of 45-degree angle is the angle of pressure. I'm very wide stance, very stable. Notice my hand position. Notice that I'm kind of swinging my foot back and forth. Just kind of searching for any densities that I feel in that area. And just slowly kind of grinding them out. That little bouncing of my foot into external rotation. I kind of put my leg up into internal rotation and then bounce the foot, which makes the femur rotate into external rotation, is really, really effective for getting a little bit of a side angle pressure on that adductor hamstring junction. If you don't have that much internal rotation of your hip, you can kind of lean away from the ball and that'll be not so demanding on the hip. Also, I like to move up and down lengthwise, sometimes cross fiber friction, but that little bouncing motion is something I discovered after just years and years of practicing these kind of exercises. This is one of the hidden areas for people that have FAI and hip impingement that gets really gunky and almost nobody targets it very well. So after that, we're going to move on. I'm going to get a barbell and put it on the ground, lay it across my lap for the quad attachment point. This is another area that can get really junky and gunky in people that are dealing with some hip instability. It's gnarly. So if you're dealing with labral tears, if you're dealing with tight hips, you've probably tried foam rolling your quads, but this just takes it up to the next level. The quad attachment points right up there by the pectineus and all these different muscles is kind of hard to get. And some people try it on the ground, which doesn't work so well. So the devil's in the details. You got to kind of know what positions to put your body in. So now I'm going to switch to the other side. Notice there's a little bit of a space between the end of the barbell and the top of my thigh. A little bit of space for my hands, and I'm getting it right there on top of the quad. I just arched my back a little bit to explore a little bit of an anterior pelvic tilt. You can do a posterior pelvic tilt. I'm moving the femur internally and externally, just finding the right angle. If it's too intense, I can lift the bar up to ease the pressure. If it's not intense enough, I can push down on the bar for more pressure. That'll really improve hip extension and a lot of other good stuff. So then after that, we'll put the bar back and we'll move on to the next exercise. For this one, I'm going to put the bar in a rack at about thigh or knee level. And I'm going to get that hamstring adductor attachment point that we had gotten with the large diameter ball just previously. But now with the barbell, it kind of gets it in a new way. It's also something you can do in the gym just before you squat or deadlift to kind of clean up hip flexion, clean up your squat pattern. Really, really makes a big difference. Those attachment points just get so junky because wherever a muscle attaches experiences the most stress, most tension, and therefore gets
the junkiest, the most kind of knotted and tense, and it can cause the most pain and restrict range of motion the most. So then I'm switching to the other side. Notice that I hooked my foot around the back of the pole, so I kind of put my hip into internal rotation. That really matters. This is why having a competent coach who's dealt with FAI themselves to teach you some of these nuanced positions really makes all the difference, because this is not something you discover unless you've struggled with hip problems for decades and just figured out all kinds of ways of making your hips feel good. So I've got my foot hooked around the pole, working on that tissue, and then we're moving on to the next exercise. For this one, I'm going to pull out my trusty yoga mat. And get a simple foam roller. And I'm going to foam roll my lateral leg. There's going to be a bit of IT band, a little bit of quad IT band interface. You're not really going to be radically changing, if at all, the tissue texture of the IT band itself. It's extremely dense, but you might be affecting the interface between the quad and the IT band. And most importantly, you'll probably find that if you tested your, say, hip external rotation before doing a bit of lateral leg rolling, it can often help. Not to mention it can help with some knee pain, but I'm doing it in this case to kind of just loosen up my hip mobility in general. And of course, I'll follow this up with a very long, thorough, active warm-up. Foam rolling and targeted tissue work and self-massage does not replace a full active warm-up. It just helps to kind of get asymmetrical hips a little bit more symmetrical, which is important before sport and before weightlifting. We're going to do a little bit of large diameter ball on the lateral hip. Just kind of breathing and relaxing, rolling around. A really nice thing to do is to put a foam roller underneath the knee to kind of let the muscles relax a little bit more. I see a lot of people do this exercise with one leg across the other, which puts the glutes and hip rotators on too much tension. So that's where the position that I just showed comes in. But if you want a deeper variation, go for the JackKnob or 2 tool on the deep hip rotators. So this is a great tool because it kind of gets through glute max, through the bigger butt muscles, and actually starts to touch some of the deeper hip rotators. So just like you have kind of the rotator cuff of the shoulder, the deep hip rotators of the hip are kind of like the hip stabilizers. And if you've got some little micro instability in there, if you're dealing with any kind of hip impingement stuff, this is a really great exercise. Normally, if I was going for deeper mobility work, I'd spend more than, 20, 30 seconds on it. But I'm just kind of checking in with my body, seeing if there's any really junky spots and just kind of clearing them up. Also, because I've been working on my body in this way, and because I'm a massage therapist and corrective exercise specialist and all this stuff, I can make change in my body really, really quickly. So after 14 years of mobilizing your body, you can make the same amount of change in 30 seconds as used to take you 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes. So that's one of the reasons you want to practice. So you get very skilled at relaxing your nervous system and making change in your tissue texture with this precision massage that we're doing here. So after that, we're going to start doing a little bit of stretching, checking in with my hip external rotation. This is just kind of like a reclined pigeon pose, figure 4 type stretch. Notice I'm kind of twisting my femur into external rotation, little bounces, checking in with the other side. Notice my eyes are closed, my face is relaxed. When you're stretching, you should be tuned in to what you're feeling in your body. After that, since that felt pretty good, I'm going to go to a slightly more intense external rotation stretch called fire log pose, or double pigeon, as they call it sometimes. Notice I'm using my hands to kind of get a little bit more of that external rotation, little mindful oscillations and movements. If you're not too familiar with this stretch, just go slow, breathing and relaxing. but once you start to get really familiar with your body, you can make little oscillations. I'm also keeping my foot slightly dorsiflexed and even everted, meaning pinky toes towards the knee. That helps to protect the knee. Then I'm flowing into downward dog, down dog, getting a little bit of hamstring calf stretch, pedaling those feet, stretching one hamstring at a time, coming up into a forward fold, as they call it in yoga, or a pike position, as they call it in gymnastics. Just kind of seeing what my straight leg hip flexion feels like. And I'm taking my feet out a little wider, checking out a squat, checking out the ankle and toe mobility in the squat, just making sure everything's feeling symmetrical, loose, opened up, comfortable. Then I flow right into a crow pose, which is like an inner groin and adductor stretch, wiggling around side to side, little bounces. Flowing right into a Cossack stretch to get a different part of the hamstring and adductors. Reaching out to my foot, little bounces, a little bit of ballistic stretching from my ballistic stretching program. Very light, nothing crazy deep. You don't want to stretch your brains out before going to sprint. Just little light limbering, loosening things up. After that, it's wide leg forward fold, toes slightly turned in, and then flowing straight into a hip flexor stretch, tucking my pelvis, posterior pelvic tilt, exaggerating it by bracing against my knee with my hands, elbows out to the side, oscillating up and down, little pulses, tucking my tail, reaching up to the sky with a little side bend to get a little bit more of that psoas iliacus complex. Very active stretching here. You notice it's not static, passive stretching before sport. Just really opening up that hip extension for sprinting. Same thing on the other side, watching me exaggerate the crunch and then the side bend, keeping my core engaged, my glute on the back leg active. Engage your butt, engage your gut when you're hip flexor stretching, so you're not arching your lumbar spine and compensating. After that, go into a little bit of a side body and oblique stretch. So the target here is that lateral line of the body. See, my side body's like a rainbow. And the intention of that is because sport doesn't take place only in the sagittal plane. There's a lot of side bending and twisting and diving for frisbees or ducking under a tackle or doing all kinds of things when you're in a chaotic sporting environment. And so we want to do more than just front and back and kind of linear stretching patterns. So opening up that oblique and side body, checking in with my hips, feeling pretty darn good. After that, we're going to move on to the upper body. So I got 2 large diameter lacrosse balls. I'm going to put it up on my thoracic spine, right between my shoulder blades. Hands go behind my head. And I'm just kind of steamrolling all that tissue in between my rhomboid kind of shoulder blade area. If you've never done this, this will probably be incredibly intense. There's lots of knots and trigger points and dense tissue up there for most people. But since I've been doing this for a long time, it feels buttery smooth. But I'm doing it anyway to kind of mobilize the ribs, mobilize the thoracic spine, get ready to chuck a frisbee really far, which takes some good rotational power. And this is a good exercise to develop that upper spine flexibility and mobility and the ability to twist, which is what we're going to work on soon. I'm also working a little bit on the lats, that side body again, those big lat muscles. So notice my face is relaxed, even though this is very intense. I'm just kind of peeling that lat side to side with that twisting motion that you see me doing. Very intense, but not showing it on the face, because if your face is relaxed, your body is relaxed. So keep that droopy face when you're mobilizing. The hand position that you see here puts the lat less on stretch, which allows me to kind of grip it and rip it a little bit more. Not literally, just get into the tissue a little bit better. So I'm putting it right on that side body, that lateral seam of my body. You can imagine that I had a seam on the side of my trunk. Now I'm adopting an arm overhead position, which hits it a little bit different because now the lat is a little bit more stretched. Just do whatever feels appropriate for you. Tucking it in like that for me usually feels like I can get in there a little bit better. And I'm just peeling forward and backward, side to side, up and down, breathing and relaxing. What you can't really see, but what I'm feeling inside my body is every exhale, there's like a unclenching, a letting go, a becoming dead weight, which is a skill that you develop with time, which really makes your stretching and tissue work a lot more effective. From here, I'm hooking my thumb behind my knee. I did a posterior pelvic tilt, a crunch. Then I'm reaching up with the ball in my hand for a little added leverage. And I'm feeling this twisting sensation in my upper back, not in my low back. This is a thoracic spine rotational drill, which is going to be really important if you're doing any kind of throwing sport like frisbee or baseball or hockey or anything where there's a twisting rotational component to it, which is pretty much every sport. And the ball just kind of adds to the intensity of the stretch. So again, I hook my thumb around the back of my knee. I crunch and tuck my tail, posterior pelvic tilt, reach to the side, breathe and relax, and I'm kind of looking in the direction of my hand. The target for where you want to feel this, as I said, is in your upper back, not your low back. If you have really tight glutes, you might feel it there, but really what you're aiming for is an upper spine, comfortable twisting sensation. Last couple of breaths there. Felt a little frisky, so I wanted to go into the pretzel stretch, where I'm kind of pulling against my own resistance. My arms are pulling against my legs for 1 or 2 seconds. And then on an exhale, I breathe and sink a little deeper. Sometimes you just gotta go with the intuitive flow, and my body was telling me I wanted a little bit more stretching. Oh, there's Keta, the famous mobility dog of Gotram. She's on all our film videos, you just never see her. She's making a guest appearance. What up, Keta? Kettlebell, as they call her. She's not a kettlebell, she's a kettleball. So continuing with the breadth stretch. And then we're coming on up, checking in, seeing how the spine feels. This is another little side body / lat stretch that you can do almost anywhere. Just little check-ins to see how does that side bending feel. This is something that most people neglect. They just, do the classic, like stretch your hamstrings, stretch your hip flexors, a couple arm swings, call it a day. But that really opens up my rotation, and now I'm ready for sport.
So that is it, a simple, short routine to mobilize your hips, get them ready for sport, and mobilize a little bit of your upper body, because sport doesn't happen like a robot. There's bending and twisting and moving your spine in all directions. And so we wanna warm that up, mobilize that before we get there. So do that hip mobility routine, throw in a little bit of spine stuff, and you'll be good to go for sport.